outdoor concerts, and it means things like parades. Things that here in the city can mean not just thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It's just not time for that now.
What about protests? If people want to march down Fifth Avenue, are they going to be allowed to do so?
Look, Wolf, this is always an area of real sensitivity. If you're just talking about health, we would always say, hey, folks, stay home if you can. But we understand at this moment in history, people are talking about the need for historic changes. I mean, today in New York City, recognizing the power and the meaning of the message Black Lives Matter, which we did in front of Trump Tower today. This is a historic moment of change. We have to respect that, but also say to people, the kinds of gatherings we're used to, the parades, the fairs, we just can't have that while we're focusing on health right now.
After 6 weeks of protests have finally died down, and while reemphasizing more lockdowns, Bill de Blasio clearly states that Black Lives Matter protests are exempt from social distancing rules. Not only that, but he spent taxpayer money to paint a giant mural on Fifth Avenue. And he went down there to give his blessing. He actually pretended to be painting the thing himself. He is openly inviting more protests while cities all over America are getting COVID spikes. Listen to the call and response chants in this next clip. No justice, no peace. Whose streets? Our streets. These are direct calls for more protesting, if not more violence. The activists are declaring that they will set the agenda in New York City. And don't forget, de Blasio and his wife are both lifelong activists. They come from that world. This may be the only time anybody ever saw Al Sharpton doing anything like real work, but he seems to be the only person here capable of keeping his mask on. Watch this. The blonde woman who holds a roller pole like a cup of latte, she has to be told that the mask goes over her nose. The woman leaning into the frame at the left actually takes her mask off to shout directions. At another time, she took off her mask to cough. Swear to God, I'll show you at the end. And look at de Blasio himself. He shoves a mint or something into his mouth and immediately touches somebody. How much less careful about germs will a bunch of fired up protesters be? Black Lives Matter. We are now 4 years into the myth that there are a great number of people who would hear this phrase and say, really? You mean that blacks are actually human beings and that we're not allowed to kill them? I never realized that. Since I was a child, there's been a wall-to-wall, sea-to-shining-sea effort to level the racial playing field. Remember busing, race-based affirmative action? Those things go back to Nixon and beyond. How could a racist nation ever come to the unanimous agreement that being called a racist was just about as serious as being called a child molester? Just to be accused of racism against black people is enough to get you thrown out of your career. This didn't start 4 years ago when 3 Marxist lesbians coined a catchphrase. This has literally been a national obsession since I was a toddler. So now Democratic governors and mayors have waived all COVID-19 health restrictions for black people, just as long as they keep protesting racism. They are actively putting black lives at risk. Haven't they been telling us since March that coronavirus is particularly dangerous to African Americans? By what logic is a protest not a super spreader event? Black lives do matter. But do they really matter to Bill de Blasio? Last week, New York City transferred $1 billion away from law enforcement. while in June, shootings were up 130% from the previous year. And de Blasio thinks that a mural is what the situation calls for? Painting these giant letters in Lafayette Square and in front of Trump Tower means that they are trying very hard to connect racism to Donald Trump. They want the protests to continue and to get focused down into hatred of the president. The Democrats are willing to spend Black lives in order to buy back the White House in November. It's one thing to be considered voting livestock on the Democratic plantation, but when they start sacrificing compliant lambs on the altar of political conquest, well, that's just way beyond the pale. No pun intended. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.